So what I want to do this morning is really highlight a few key points about the election and its aftermath, and speculate about what might happen in the future. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes and then open it up to questions and answers. So I think the first thing I wanted to say is that the May election took place against the background of extreme hostility to professional politicians in the United Kingdom. It's not unusual, but the degree of hostility to the established political parties and the established politicians was very great. Blair's pollster, Philip Gould, said that the division in 2010 was not between Labour and the Conservatives, but between those who were supportive of or opposed to the existing style of politics. Now, if we try and probe why that might be, I think one massive factor was a scandal which gripped the country's attention for much of 2009, which I've also written about. It might seem a bit small beer with some countries, sure here, but some countries will find some of the issues which came up in that so-called Spencer scandal rather pathetic. But what this scandal revealed was that a very large number of Britain's MPs had been exploiting a system of allowances to give them tax-free second home gains. They had second homes which they could buy on the public purse, and they were selling those, making quite a bit of money. But in addition to that, they were cheating on the expenses system and giving themselves luxury items like plasma television sets, antique furniture, and then some absurd things which of course caught the public imagination, like moats, houses for their ducks or their ponds, and of course luxury swimming pools. What was interesting about this was the degree of public attention. Mostly the public doesn't pay that much attention to what's going on in politics, but this particular scandal was picked up by one newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, which won an international award for it, and it had a massive effect on the public estimation, not just of Parliament, but of the political systems as a whole. And partly because of that, a large number of MPs in 2010 decided the time had come for them to step down. So an unprecedented large number of MPs in 2010 decided they weren't going to stand for election again, 150 or more. And as a result, together with the turnover that always comes about in elections, the new House of Commons, when it was elected, had 227 new members, 35% of the House were rookies. Now this has created a quite different kind of atmosphere, a sort of presupposition that politics is being refreshed, is being changed. In addition to the expenses scandal, the political scene was marked by a range of other very deep concerns about the economy, which was clearly affected by the global economic crisis, about the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and a series of rather interesting revelations, personal revelations, about the then Prime Minister who went into the election, Gordon Brown, about his personality. We're not going to go into all of the lurid details, but one detail which did emerge was that he had been bullying his Downing Street staff and other civil servants, and some of them had taken to reporting this bullying on the National Bullying Helpline. So there was a great deal of antagonism and suspicion surrounding the Prime Minister. Unlike Blair, who was, I think, for the most part popular with the public, Brown had never really found his feet, wasn't much liked by the British public, and I think that showed in the election. So if we turn to look at the candidates and the parties, Labour had been in power for 13 years, and it was coming to that point where the public was beginning to say, well, it's time to clean out this lot and have some fresh faces. In fact, all three major party leaders, including Brown himself, had not fought an election before that they were new to facing the public. Brown had succeeded Tony Blair in 2007 after a period of intense antagonism between the two leaders inside government, very debilitating antagonism. The new Conservative leader was David Cameron, who succeeded a series of unsuccessful Conservative leaders, and Clegg, the Liberal Democratic leader, had no election experience either. Clegg himself, in fact, although he's now the Deputy Prime Minister, rather unusually had been in Parliament only since 2005. So what you had in 2010 was, in May, was an election between three party leaders who were all relatively untried at the polls. They hadn't had the kind of record that Tony Blair had. The campaign in Britain is short, particularly by comparison with the US marathons, where campaigns tend to last a very long time indeed. But in May, in the 4 weeks leading up to the election, there were a number of episodes which transformed the contest, and a number of features about the campaign which were rather different from before. The first was the use of head-to-head TV debates between the three party leaders. I think anybody who watched them, in the end, found them rather boring. But there was a certain amount of excitement generated, at least in the first one. And as a result of those debates, Clegg, the Liberal Democratic Party leader, emerged as a real force to reckon with. He had an attractive personality. He upstaged both Brown and Cameron. And people observers of the election thought that this really was going to signal a breakthrough for the Liberal Democrats. In fact, as we see, there's a handout here which I hope most of you can actually look at. I'll see a copy. The Liberal Democratic vote actually went, the number of seats went down, and the promise of a Liberal Democratic breakthrough was not fulfilled. But in terms of these TV debates, which is going to be very difficult to go back on, the Liberal Democrats did very well indeed. Now, some people say that Cameron certainly should never have allowed those debates to occur, that he should not have put himself on an equal footing with the leader of a minor party. But I think it was very difficult to refuse those debates, and I think they're now going to become an established part of the election scenery. The other slightly odd episode which occurred was something which became known in the British press as Bigotgate. This was an episode which I think drew attention to Brown's Prime Minister's personal failings. It basically involved Brown doing a walkabout, going to see a woman who asked him about immigration, and then being caught with the mic on in the car, saying, "Who brought that woman into talk to me? She's absolutely dreadful. She's a bigot." And this was replayed on the radio. It made YouTube in the United States. I'm not sure if you can you get YouTube here. If you tap in Bigotgate and Duffy, you might be able to still see some of those clips. But I think it became an iconic moment in the campaign, with Brown listening to what he actually said and him putting his head in his hands. And I think at that moment, people realised that